My name is Ken Butterfield. I'm the chair of the Department of Management, Information Systems, and Entrepreneurship, which oversees the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, which is running these events, including the business plan competition. So I'm just so excited to be able to be part of this, which represents the kickoff of our 13th annual business plan competition. And a big part of kicking off the competition, of course, is this series of resource nights. We started this series last year, are very pleased to be able to continue it this year. The resource nights provide a lot of value, in my view, certainly, and I think everybody would agree. The resource nights not only bring inspiring speakers here to Pullman to be able to present as we're doing tonight, but also, I think, at least as importantly, provide our students, our entrepreneurially minded students, with an opportunity to network with each other, and then, of course, also to get that great, practical business plan advice and assistance from industry and faculty experts. So again, just a big welcome. With that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Marie Mays, our director, and I'll embarrass her a little bit by just saying our extremely capable, she's just done such a fantastic job. Director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, Marie Mays. Here she is.
All right, thanks, Ken. And I just wanted to welcome you as well to the kickoff night for our resource nights and for our business plan competition. And I'm thrilled that you're all here tonight to hear from our industry experts and to prepare for the business plan competition. I wanted to give you a couple updates on the business plan competition, though. So some of you maybe don't know about the format or how exactly the competition runs. So I'll just take a couple minutes to give you some quick updates on that, and also to tell you that I brought some of our glossy flyers. So we have those in the back. Haley Dreyer, who is my student assistant, is Haley. Will you wave? Just stand up and wave. Is this Haley? Haley's my student assistant for the business plan competition this year, and she has a bunch of these in the back. So if you're interested in having one of the glossy flyers with all the information about the rules, and the schedule is on the back as well, feel free to take one of those on your way out. It's also on our website. We have a brand new updated website, and the link to that website is on this flyer as well. But you can also just go to the business.wsu.edu website and scroll about halfway down, and there's a white box that says enter the business plan competition. You just have to click on that box and it'll take you to our main site. And on the right hand side of the site now, it says there's a little box that lets you enter the competition. So we partnered with a software firm called PitchBurner this year to help automate all of the entries and evaluations of the competition. So you'll click on that and you'll create a PitchBurner login, and then you'll be able to upload all the information about your team on that site. So the first thing, just as a reminder, is that the deadline just to register on that PitchBurner site is Thursday, March 12th. So I just want to remember that's coming up in March. And then after that, the first thing that you'll submit into that site is a 4 to 5 page executive summary, Thursday, March 26th. So after those are screened, the top teams then advance to the competition rounds, and those are April 24th and 25th this year. So you can plan that and put that on your calendar. That's an amazing couple of days. Some of you have been in the competition in the past and have really had a great experience learning from industry experts and getting feedback from them. And we have a gala dinner the Friday night, and then Saturday we are really where we award the money to the teams that are our top 6 teams on Saturday. And so we have a little bit extra prize money this year. So we have $48,000 in prize money for the College League. So there's $38,000 that'll go to the top 5 teams, and we have $10,000 of merit prizes this year, which is really nice. So best written plan, best presentation, best sustainable venture, and best tech venture all are eligible for $2,500 prizes, as well as the top 5 teams. So we're really excited to offer that kind of prize money to our students. That's big prize money for undergraduate business plan competition. And so we're pleased to be able to offer you that for all the hard work that you put in to being a part of our competition. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our speakers for tonight. So our speakers for tonight are just amazing serial entrepreneurs with just lots of experience that they're happy to share with you, both in their presentation and after during our networking night. So our first speaker is, they're going to speak together. So Tom Simpson. Tom, wave so they know which one's Tom. It's Tom. So he's Tom. So Tom Simpson is the co-founder and chairman of etailz. Tom has over 25 years of experience as an investment banker, venture capitalist, angel investor, and entrepreneur. Currently, he focuses on working closely with emerging companies in the Spokane region to achieve growth and profitability. And we have just been blessed to have him involved in helping some of our teams here as well. So Tom is the co-founder, like I said, and chairman of etailz. And etailz operates a portfolio of synergistic online retailers offering environmentally friendly and lifestyle enhancing products. etailz ranked 127 in 2013 on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing companies in the country. He's also the president of the Spokane Angel Alliance, a 100+ member group that invests in early stage companies based in the Inland Northwest. Previously, he was the managing partner of Northwest Venture Alliance. He has lots of experience in investment banking, managed private placements, mergers and acquisitions for multiple companies in the region. Tom has a bachelor's degree in business administration from University of Washington, MBA from the Wharton School, and serves as an adjunct professor at Gonzaga. So we're excited to get him involved as an honorary Cougar. And we will promise not to hold the UW undergrad against him. Tom has 3 children. He's a private pilot, and he's participated in numerous triathlons. So that's impressive there. So Tom brought Andy Barrett with him, and Andy is the executive director of Berg Companies. Andy graduated from WSU in 1990 and 1994. This is where you all cheer. Yay. Go Cougs. And in 1994, he purchased the F.O. Berg Company, a company founded in Spokane in 1983. In 2006, Berg refocused it on government contracting and renamed the business the Berg Companies. From 2006 to 2010, Andy was president and CEO of Berg Companies. 2010, he became executive director and is the majority owner of the company. Berg Companies is a rapidly growing company in Spokane that generated over $50 million in revenue in 2014 with forecasts on pace for 2015. So he'll have lots to tell you about being a fast-growing company. Recently, Andy founded The Toolbox, which he's going to tell you more about tonight, a company that works with young entrepreneurs to develop innovative product-based companies. So far, Innovate started SportsScope Inc., which manufactures an end zone camera system for filming athletic games, and Vestas Systems, which manufactures solar and design solutions for regional businesses. Andy's been married to Liz Barrett for 22 years. They have 3 children, Madeline, Luke, and Jack, 2 in college and 1 in high school. And I think that Luke is here, right? Luke's here. Hi, Luke. Welcome. And he's a Cougar as well, so we're happy to have Luke continue the Cougar legacy. The Barrett family is very actively involved with the Boys and Girls Club, Mobius Science Center, CASA, the Children's Village, and enjoys an active lifestyle in Coeur d'Alene. So with that, now that you know all that about them, they have great, impressive bios. We're going to turn it over to them, and they're just going to share a little bit from their experiences, and then they'll have time for you to ask them questions after. So I'm going to hand it to Tom first.
I'm not quite sure if I need a microphone or not, but first of all, if you guys are all entrepreneurs, right? Or you want to be entrepreneurs or intended to be entrepreneurs. And as an entrepreneur, you have to realize that oftentimes when you're in the face of a company and developing a product or selling or marketing your product, you have to just wing it, right? You just kind of wing it because you don't really know exactly the circumstance you're in. Well, that kind of describes Andy and I's presentation today, because on the way down today, we kind of scripted it all out in the car and wrote it all down into notes, but we left it in the car. So please bear with us as we kind of just make this up as we go, which is really a very important attribute as an entrepreneur. Kind of the fun thing about coming down here with Andy is Andy and I have been friends for, 20 years or so, and we're both kind of involved in a number of entrepreneurial ventures in Spokane. But in many ways, we're kind of the odd couple. Because my background, and you were describing, has kind of been as a venture capitalist and as an investment banker. But frankly, in most of those situations, I was kind of dealing with technology companies, software companies or e-commerce companies, or these days mobile app or cloud computing, all things that you really, really can't touch. Whereas Andy's whole background has been in kind of making physical products, tangible products that are cranked out with sophisticated machinery and you can touch and those sort of things. But we've kind of brought that together, and we've both had kind of different learnings over the years, but we're kind of different in that regard. But we're kind of teaming up in the toolbox to, which Andy will talk about more, to kind of combine our collective experience. Also, another thing that Andy and I have in common is that we're really both spent a lot of time devoting energy and mentoring young entrepreneurs. I mean, that's something that we both really, really enjoy doing. And in fact, Luke, Andy's son, is here tonight. And last summer, he kind of came up with a company, a Lightbox project, and he's a budding entrepreneur. My son kind of started a couple of companies in Spokane, so it's really kind of something that's in our DNA, working with young people. So one thing about kind of tonight and what you guys are doing, we've judged a number of business plan competitions, and I would really encourage you, as you guys kind of embark on this, to work on this business plan and the competition as if you are really going to start this company. That this is not just an academic experience, but really try to have the mission, or at least really think and prepare yourself that you're really going to start this venture, and think about it from that perspective. Not necessarily that you have to put something in paper and turn in an assignment, but you are going to start this company. Because Andy and I kind of both believe that a couple of things. One, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, there's not a better time in your life than right now to do it. I mean, my guess is most of you are probably not married, you don't have kids, you don't have mortgages, you have all sorts of opportunity ahead of you to take risks without really losing a lot. So I would really encourage you, think about this business plan you're putting together. Win that $48,000 in prizes. Start the company, and even if worst case you fail, you know what? You're young. You're not really going to set your career back too much in any way if you tried and you failed, and you learn so much about it. And failure is not bad at all. When I was a kid, my dad was kind of a conservative attorney in Spokane, Washington, and he always kind of advised us, don't fail. Failure is awful, it's horrible, but that's not the case. As long as you tried hard and gave it your all, and didn't lie, cheat, or steal along the way, it's almost, quite frankly, right now, among entrepreneurs, failure is a badge of honor. Yeah, I tried that company and it didn't work out, but you know what? I stood up the next day, came up with another idea, and started another one. I mean, successful entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, he failed miserably. And he was even fired at Apple, but then he came back. So all kind of a long way of saying, think about really using this opportunity to really start the business and go for it. Kind of another bit of commentary. I think right now the country is in the midst of an entrepreneurial boom. There's just so much going on right now. Frankly, the business plan competitions are kind of an example of that. They're everywhere, and there's prize money, and companies are getting started. Also, you have things like Shark Tank, and people are watching Shark Tank and seeing, wow, you know what? I've got an idea. I could go on Shark Tank. I could pitch it. Man, if they can do it, I can do it. And it's kind of just telegraphed to people that, if you have an idea, yeah, you can go for it. If you need to raise money for your idea, you can go to places like Kickstarter. I don't know if any of you have seen like the coolest cooler on Kickstarter. If you haven't, Google it. This guy just kind of came up with an idea for this super cool cooler. It plays music. It has a blender on it. It has fancy wheels. It has all these great accessories to it. And my guess, he kind of spent probably a couple $1,000s, put it up on Kickstarter, raised $13 million for his idea. Again, that just kind of confirms to people that, hey, if I have an idea, I could do that. I could raise money for it. And if you need to sell your product, there's so many more easy channels of distribution for physical products like Amazon. You can sell your product on Amazon. So right now it's easy to become an entrepreneur. You can raise money. And again, the risk of failure just isn't there. So I'm kind of connecting all these dots and thinking that the country is kind of in the middle of an entrepreneurial boom. And you guys are just so well positioned to take advantage of it. I'm going to tell one more little story along the lines about taking this business plan competition seriously and starting a company, because my company, etailz, was the product of a business plan competition in Spokane. It kind of started because I occasionally teach at Gonzaga, and I came up with an idea for a company, an eco-friendly or e-commerce company selling eco-friendly products. I mentioned it to class one day. A kid came up to me, 21 years old at the time, and said, hey, Tom, I like that idea. Can I write a business plan for you? And I said, sure, go for it. And he did, and I turned it in a couple of weeks later. I spruced it up, and I thought I was kind of done with it. And he said, no, Tom, let's enter this business plan into the business plan competition in Spokane between GU, Whitworth, and Eastern. And I said, sure, go for it. And he did, and he got first place. And again, I kind of patted him on the back, and he was ready to graduate at the time, and he had some job offers. And I said, hey, have a great life. Let's keep in contact. And he said, no, let's actually start this company. And at that point in time, I really couldn't say no. And I said, sure. And kind of like the next Monday, he just kind of moved into my office with a couple of other people, including his then girlfriend, now wife. And they just started doing stuff. I wasn't really quite sure what they were doing, but they were taking up space. And then like a couple weeks later, he came to me and said, hey, Tom, if we're going to really do this, I might need some capital. Do you have any that you could invest in the company? And again, I couldn't say no. Well, flash forward now, and that was kind of 2008. Flash forward now, we're a 130-person company. We did 60 million in revenues last year. We were on the Inc. 500 the last 2 years in a row. And Josh, this kid who just came up to me after class, is CEO of the company. And frankly, he's probably one of the best CEOs I have ever worked with. Again, that is just an example that if you go forward in this business plan competition with the intent that you're really going to start the company, and you're young and you can afford to take risks, and we're in the middle of an entrepreneurial boom and it's been done before, you got to go for it and do it. So that's kind of just my opening remarks. Now, Andy has some similar experiences too. He started, he bought Berg Manufacturing. He started a company called Sportscope Video, and now you're going forward to the toolbox. And you might want to just,
Sure.
comment on some of those.
Sure.
And
I don't. Can you hear him okay without the mic? It's for the camera. Oh, it's for the camera. Okay, perfect. Again, thanks, Tom. And Tom is being extremely humble. When you, if you ever get a chance and you're up in Spokane, you go by the McKinstry Innovation Center, take a look in etailz, his company, and it is just one cool company. It's 120 plus employees. The average age is probably 24. They're in flip-flops. Some of them bring their pet. They got Frisbees. They have really cool parties, and they're making money. So it's just a great example of what can happen with these business plan competitions. I'm a big one on innovation and passion. And you have to have those two things. If you don't have those two things in your business plan, you're wasting your time. It's got to be something that you want to wake up in the morning and jump on, something you're passionate about. Now, I'll go back to my story. Tom wanted me to tell my story a little bit about Berg. And so 22 years ago, I was 24 years old and living in Seattle with my wife. And there's this company for sale in Spokane, two elderly gentlemen that wanted to retire. They didn't have any kids to take over their business. And so I didn't have any money, so I made them an offer. I said, I'll come over and I'll work my tail off. You guys go to your lake cabins in the summer, and I'll work my tail off, and I'll increase your value of your company, but you're going to have to finance me. And that's what happened. It was a little canvas company, and we were doing about $1 million in sales. But I felt like, for me, that was my business plan, was I just needed that foundation, the line of credit, the reputation. The company's been around since 1883. And I could take that, and then I could write my business plan. And since then, we've innovated that from a, quote, tent and awning company, to one of the largest shelter-based, container-based shelter manufacturers in the world. And today, we use that innovation and that passion to manufacture forward operating bases and disaster relief bases for military and disaster relief operations. During Afghanistan, for instance, this is what the difference an idea can make in the world. In Afghanistan, 2/3 of our troops that were killed in theater were involved in delivering fuel and water to forward operating bases, those convoys, because they're most vulnerable. If you think about it, that's when you're most vulnerable. When you're on a base, you're fortified, you're vulnerable. Pentagon came to us and said, use innovation, use your passion. We want a forward operating base that doesn't require any fuel and no water. And they're not trying to save the environment, and they're not trying to save money. They're saving lives. And so using that type of passion, that innovation, we're able to come up with forward operating bases that use less than 90% of the fuel reduction, water reduction. So now these supplies can be aired in versus these convoys. And so when you're thinking about your business plan and when you're formulating it and you've got that idea, it's applying it. How is that going to change the world? And using that passion to do that. So today, Berg is a $50 million manufacturing company. It's I'd call it a medium-sized company now. So I actually have a partner that came in and ran it, or runs it. And so Tom and we've started something called the Toolbox, and it's a manufacturing-based innovation center. So if any of you have business plans that are manufacturing-based, because that's the difference between Tom and I like to weld it, we bake fabric, we build it, we put lights on it, solar panels, that's the kind of stuff we do. But if you've got any of that, the Toolbox is a product accelerator. It's got a maker space in it, so if you did need access to a public place to get in and learn to use some equipment to prototype your product, that'd be a place you could do that. And we also have incubated a couple of companies out of it so far, and we'll be incubating 2 or 3 more yet this year. One I want to talk a little bit about, it's called, well, should I talk about Vestas or should I talk about? SportScope. Yeah. Okay, so this is a good example of another term you'll hear us use all the time is bootstrap. The days of when Tom was a VC and he'd fly all over the place and these software companies would have this great idea and Tom would fly in and the parking lot was filled with Mercedes and they'd ask for $1 million for this idea and Tom write them $1 million check and here you go. And they'd turn around in 6 months and say, hey, Tom, we're out of money. We need another $1 million. Okay, here it goes. Those days are long gone. Right? And so today we talk a lot about bootstrapping. And so when you're thinking about your business plan, think about bootstrapping. And by that, I'll give you an example of SportScope. SportScope is a 30-foot filming mast used for football, sports in general, but mostly football, where I could sit here and I could film from 30 foot up. I could control and move around the field and film. It gives a better perspective for the coaches. It's a coaching tool. We looked into the industry. The industry was extremely vulnerable. It's a very, very focused target market. It's coaches, mostly football and mostly high school. So we could really focus on that. We looked at the industry. No one in the industry was savvy with SEO and marketing, engineering. And so we bootstrapped, we put a team together for some equity of an engineer, a finance guy, and a marketing person. And none of these were students. These were either moonlighters, which I call moonlighters is someone that has a day job. They can't afford to jump out of that day job, but they want to flex their entrepreneurial muscle, if you will. And it was moonlighters. Actually, it was all moonlighters in this case. So it was people that wanted to work on weekends, and we designed, we prototyped, and we built a better mousetrap. We looked for $50,000 in funding, and we launched that company 3 years ago. With $50,000, we launched that company. It was profitable after the first month. It's been profitable every year since. It paid back the $50,000. And by the end of this year, it should be sitting on about $500,000 worth of cash. Again, it was bootstrap. That's what made that work. Any comments on that?
No, I mean, I think in both, the parallels between when Andy started SportScope Video and when I started etailz with Josh, both wanted to be bootstrapped. And both young people, we helped them put together teams and we mentored them. my company, etailz, got to $27 million in revenues just off $250,000 of capital. And your story about my days as a VC and writing big checks, I thought that was just a waste. People were just unfocused. And I really think as you put together your business plan, think about what you can really do with a modest amount of investment. I was talking to the Go Kefi team earlier today, and they kind of reminded me of a story I told them a while ago about raising capital. And I kind of compare capital to a young business like food in your body. You need to have a certain amount of food in order to survive. Well, a young company needs a certain amount of money to get started. But if you put too much food in your body, you become slow and lethargic and unfocused. Same thing happens with too much capital in a company. You put too much capital in the bank account of a young company, all of a sudden they're flying first class. They're not really worrying too much about how much they're paying people or what the rent is and those sort of things. And I've seen it over and over and again. Also it makes you be really, really focused. If you just have a little bit of capital, you make it last. And I'm gonna give an example in that regard. Again, when I started etailz, it was kind of my capital, and I didn't really, I wanted to kind of be careful about how much I put in the business. And as a result, we did things way differently. We were forced to use that capital in different ways. One thing we did is, frankly, the venture capital model was, hey, go out and hire a bunch of people that have done it before in e-commerce, some really experienced people, and pay them fancy salaries and all that. Well, we couldn't do it. So instead, we said, let's just hire people right out of college or even interns right in college. The traditional thing was, well, you're going to need to have a lot of software to help you do what you're doing in e-commerce, and all these fancy companies are selling these software platforms. Well, we couldn't afford to do that, so instead we had to develop our own software. We got computer science interns from Eastern Washington University, and they helped us develop our own software. And on and on and on. And so we had to figure out how to do things differently with a limited amount of capital. And then about 2 years later, there's a company that was started about the same times that etailz was started. It was called Ecomom. And it was started with like $12 million of capital. And some of the funding came from Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of Zappos. And they did all the things you do with a lot of money. They hired fancy people, fancy offices, bought all the software stuff. And guess what? They went out of business. They ran out of money. They'd raised $12 million. We'd raised like $250,000, and we ended up buying the company for just pennies on the dollar. And I keep looking back upon that, and it really kind of made my view on capital crystal clear. They had all this money, and they did the things a traditional way, and they blew it. So that's a little bit of a side. Kind of focusing more on the business plans that you guys are coming up with, and Andy and I were kind of bantering on the way down, is about what's the most important thing in this business plan that you guys are putting together. And we kind of said it's the idea. It is what you have come up with. And it's really important that you're passionate about it. Andy alluded to that. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of companies that I've recently funded, and then one that Andy and I are about ready to start that really kind of comes from passion. And one of them is also a winner of Startup Week in Spokane, like the Go Kefi team is. And this is a company that was started by a 14-year-old girl in Spokane, Washington. And she had a dog, and she loved her dog, but she was so sad during school that she couldn't talk to her dog or see her dog. And she also felt when she came home from school that the dog was kind of sad too. It had suffered separation anxiety. So she thought, wow, how could I address that? Well, she came up with an idea for a product, and it's basically a doggy dish with a stand behind it. And on the stand, you can put an iPad or an extra mobile phone that you might have, so that if you're at work, you just take your mobile phone, push a button, and it turns on at the house, and all of a sudden your picture's on this thing, and you're going, hey, Rover, where are you? And Rover kind of comes up to it, and Rover's looking at you, and you're looking at Rover, and you can say, hi, Rover, and Rover can bark back at you, so you have have all this, you feel good and Rover feels good, but then really cool, you can push a button on your phone and it can say, hey, Rover, you want a treat? And a little treat comes down. And, that was an idea that was fueled by passion, by a need that she saw. And guess what? There was no one else on the market that was doing anything like it. A novel idea, unique, started by someone with passion. Well, we've gone ahead and I've helped them raise a couple $100,000. We built the product. We're selling it now. And she's gotten tremendous national publicity. She's been on NBC Nightly News, CBS News, the Meredith Vieira Show, and actually Microsoft does a contest every year where they select the best small business idea. Well, 2 weeks ago, IC Pooch came on the list of one of the 10 finalists, and tomorrow we find out whether or not she will be selected as the best small business idea. So anyway, but all because of passion, and it was unique too. Another story along those lines is I'm an investor in a company in Spokane called Gemini Educational Systems. And Gemini is an online curriculum for parents or therapists to help autistic children improve their vocabulary count or communication skills. And this company was started by a husband and wife team in Spokane. They have 6 children, and 3 of the kids are on the spectrum of autism. And of course, when they learned this, when the younger kids were showing the symptoms of autism, they were crushed, and they said, you know what? The mom said, you know what? I'm going to homeschool these kids. I just want to make sure I can do whatever I can to give these kids the best chance. Well, she spent 10 years homeschooling these kids, and along the way, she came up with her own way of teaching kids, kind of a proprietary curriculum. And she really noticed in her kids that her autistic kids, their vocabulary count was dramatically higher and their communication skills were much better than the other autistic kids that were kind of going through the public school systems. So she boiled this down into a curriculum, and now it's offered online. But she came to me and was looking for capital, and I helped kind of arrange the funding for them. And now next week, or in March, a peer-reviewed, double-blinded clinical study is going to come out showing that her curriculum really is statistically significant in improving vocabulary count and communication skills. Again, an idea that was founded on passion and unique and different and really served a real public need. Then the last one is one that Andy and I are going to start. And I mentioned Andy and I were friends for we've been friends for a long time. Still are, yeah. And Luke can probably remember this too, but Andy was a neighbor of mine. And Andy is kind of one of those neighbors who put his Christmas lights up when he moved in the neighborhood and never took them down. And I used to tease Andy. I go, Andy, can you just take those lights down? And not only did he keep them up, they were kind of sloppy. I mean, they weren't even straight, and they were just hanging and loop-de-loop and put up with staples, and it just looked bad. It kind of devalued the neighborhood. So again, kind of being entrepreneurial and passionate about things, like, how can we deal with this problem that Andy has? So I thought, well, you wonder if there were year-round holiday lights. You put them up once, and you have a little control pad, and on Christmas, you push a button, and your house is illuminated green and red and white, and then comes Groundhog's Day, and it's appropriate for the February 2nd colors. Then you got Valentine's Day, and it flashes pink and red and white. Then you've got St. Patrick's Day, it's green and white. 4th of July, red, white, and blue. Then we got Halloween, orange and black. Cougar Saturday. And see, the other thing, too, is these lights can be on your house, they can be on your tree, they can be on your deck, they can be on your family room. It's holiday, or it can be Cougar colors or this weekend Seahawks colors. So again, this is an idea that, came up with. We're passionate about it, and now Andy and I are working with a team of students in Spokane, and we're going to bring holiday lights to market. So finally, Andy's house can be better decorated. So, but those are kind of little silly stories, but really, what I'm trying to telegraph is the best ideas are ones that are fueled by passion that you have for it, and ones that are unique. Other people aren't doing it. And that's always the case with IC Pooch, with Gemini, and with the Holiday Light. We haven't come up with a name for the company yet. Anything to add on that? No.
My lights are down this year.
Lights are down.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing that I would highlight, and as you're putting together the plan, is thinking about your business model. How is your company going to make money? I have so many people. Like yesterday, a guy came to me, and his app is called Video Garage or something like that. And he has an interesting premise. He says, if you go to Craigslist to buy something, a garage sale item or something you're selling in your home, or something that's being sold on eBay, maybe it's a bicycle or a motorcycle or something like that. There's just static pictures of it. He goes, wonder if those things were all videos. So you take a video of this object. So if you're a prospective buyer, you can kind of see a full 360 view, and you can hear it and all those sort of things. And he came to me and said, this is just a great idea. And I said, well, how are you going to make money? I said, I don't know. I mean, no one else is doing it. It sounds cool. Might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many businesses really go, well, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to make money. And I think that is a fatal flaw. And he came to me and said, well, Snapchat never made money, or Instagram never made money. I mean, you'll figure it out later. You just get people to use it. And I really, really discount that. I mean, yes, there are companies like Snapchat and Instagram and those that just get a lot of users, and they figure out how to make money later. But also, people do get struck by lightning, and they win the lottery too. You just can't plan on those events. I think it's really important on day one in your business plans that you really think about how you are going to make money, and ideally how you're going to make money early. Both Andy and I really share the premise, have a modest amount of capital and be profitable as soon as you can, because that really forces a lot of discipline on you to figure out how to do it. And a lot of business models, I mean, you look at a lot of companies, and sometimes the business models aren't necessarily apparent to you. They've figured out how to charge for the product, or the payment terms, or the discounts. That really is almost kind of a hook for you. Obviously the obvious ones are the razor and the razor blade, the printer and the printer cartridges. But until those became commonplace, people didn't really understand. Hold it, they're giving me the razor for free, but I'm paying this much money for the razor blade. But a lot of successful companies have, behind the scenes, there's some unique hook about their business model, how they make money. One of my favorite ones, frankly, is Starbucks. Starbucks is essentially selling a legal drug. They hook you on this thing. You don't realize that. They get you to come back every single day and pay, I pay $1.92 every day for black water when I go to Starbucks. I'm addicted to it. I mean, that is frankly part of their business model. So be thoughtful as you design how your companies are going to make money. Now, I really love companies where I make money when I sleep. And think about that too. I mean, some businesses are really labor intensive and you've got to be there. But imagine if you had a business where you make money when you're sleeping. I mean, my company, etailz, does that. I'm sound asleep. All 130 of us are sound asleep at night, but our little e-commerce website is up, and people around the world are buying stuff from us. I mean, that is wonderful. Anything to add there?
I'll add a couple of things on the business plan. A couple of other things we look for when we're looking at markets and products is definitely vulnerable industries. So I like to look at the competitive analysis and really take a look at little niches. And I'm a niche guy, so I'm not, when we met with the team earlier, they were talking about going viral. I'm a niche guy. I like to look at niches, look at products, and look at that competitive analysis and who's out there, because there's quite a few industries out there that are vulnerable. The other thing is I love too is you talk about disruptive technologies, and we see a lot of that happening here. How can you move into that industry and do that? So I guess that would be a few of the other things I would offer to you as you guys are moving forward. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Or we wanted to kind of do this little interactive
I got
too.
a couple more things.
You got a couple?
Yeah, sure.
By the way, he'll keep going. So
I was born in 1960, and no. Actually, some of the one of the things that we talked about the Go Kefi people today too is what's important about the financial part of your business plan, because part of your business plan has to have financial projections in there. And one of my observations is there's one thing I know for sure if I look at your business plan about your financial projections. One thing I know absolutely for sure, they're going to be wrong. They're going to be wrong. But what I look for when I look at a kind of a business plan, look at the financial section, I kind of look for two things. One is I want to get a sense for how big you are thinking. Are you really thinking that, man, I just have this wonderful idea and we're going to be a super large company in a short period of time? Do you have big, hairy, audacious goals or BHAGs? Or are you kind of a plodder, just kind of, a lifestyle business? Neither one of them are right or wrong, but since my background has kind of been as a venture capitalist or an angel investor, I kind of like to see plans that have a little bit of juice in them, things that are going to grow big fast. So one of the first things I look for is just how big are you thinking? How big can this thing be? I know it's going to be wrong. And even if you think it's going to be really big, I hope maybe you'll temper it a little bit with some rationality. You're not likely to be $1 billion business in 5 years, but maybe 50 to 100 million is possible. So if you really are a big thinker, just make sure you temper it a little bit with a little bit of reality. The other thing I look at is what assumptions? What are the assumptions behind your financial projections? How many units are you going to sell? What's the price? What's your profit margin? How are you going to market it? And again, I know it's going to be wrong, but I just want to know how much you've thought about it. Have you really done a lot of research and careful thought into your assumptions? So that's what to me is most meaningful when I look at financial projections. How big can this be? Have you thoughtfully thought about your assumptions? And then the last thing is, oftentimes I look at companies and they show me their projections, and after 5 years, they're 20 million in revenues and they're $15 million in profits. Well, that's crazy. That'd be like 75% profit margins, which would make you the most profitable company in the world. And I see that all the time. I go, really? You think you can be the most profitable company in the world on a percentage basis? They really haven't thought about it. They haven't looked at kind of common industry ratios to realize that if you're a restaurant company, it's crazy to think that you're going to have net profit greater than 5% of revenues. And then one last thing that we can over questions is, I think people often ask me, what is the most successful ingredient? What is the most key ingredient of a successful company? And oftentimes kind of people expect me to say this whiz-bang product or something like that. It's really the company's culture and its team. That trumps everything. I mean, you can have a great product and a great market, but a team that is dysfunctional or they don't work together or not really experienced, and that company's going to fail. On the other hand, you can take a company with this kind of an average idea and an average market, but man, the team behind that company, they're locked in arms. They're completely aligned. Same expectations. They get out of bed in the morning and they all want to work together. That company's going to do really, really well. And in my company, etailz, culture is just super, super important. And I was very fortunate on day one that Josh, who I started the company with, we're 8 years into it. We've never had an argument. And we just get along so well. We're completely on the same page. And you walk into our offices, there are no offices, there are no cubicles. We're just in a big room with a bunch of tables, and everyone from me on down to an intern has just one little desk, a couple of monitors, and it's just amazing because the open office environment like that just spurs communication and collaboration, and we're just all on the same page. So I would encourage you, as part of your plans, to thoughtfully think about who would be on your team. Do you have the same expectations? Are you going to put in the same time, the same commitment? Are you thinking it's going to be a big company? Are you thinking it's going to be a lifestyle business? Are you thinking you're just doing this for 3 years? Are you thinking about doing it for 10 years? Are your skills complementary with mine? Those are really important discussions to have early on. And then also to think about your culture. What are the core values of your company going to be? In my company, we have a list of 10 core values that are posted everywhere that really drive everything that we do. And some are kind of obvious, some are kind of quirky. One of our core values is expedite the betterness. And one day, Josh was kind of trying to motivate the team, and that just blurted out of his lips. Why can't we? Because he, like all entrepreneurs, he wants things done yesterday. And one day he just said, let's just expedite the betterness. So that turned into one of our core values. So team and culture are kind of a very intangible but highly meaningful part of your business plan.
Thank you. I want to ask you questions in respect of strategies. To start with, when you want to start a little business, and you need to develop strategies, both short, medium, and long term, in order to help you to focus. How possible to align our strategies, both short, medium, and long, with our immediate operations in order to make us to be successful?
You know, I'm probably going to say something that is highly inappropriate and unacademic, but when you're a startup company, though, and I assume you're talking about a startup, right? Long-term strategy, man, that's interesting, but I will tell you from my company, Green Cupboards, we have pivoted and morphed and changed over and over again that, any strategy that we had on day one, we've completely broken it. Really, when you're starting up a company, you're kind of in desperation mode. You just want to survive tomorrow and next week and make payroll. So I'm really thinking that, your strategy early on just is, let's get a product out there. May not be perfect, but let's get it out there. Let's get people buying it. Let's market it. Let's make money. Let's generate cash flow. And if you do that and you do it right, undoubtedly you're going to learn new information from customers and feedback. Market dynamics are going to change. Someone else is going to come in the market. And so really your long-term strategy really should be to change regularly, constantly pivot, be aware of your environment, and constantly change what you're doing. One of my favorite quotes is, that I actually just kind of stumbled upon it recently, is, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevancy even less. So really the message there is you need to constantly changing and adapting. So long-term strategies are interesting, and companies like Microsoft and big companies like that can probably do it. But when you're a startup, you're constantly changing.
I'll comment on that as well. In a lot of our smaller companies, we see that all the time. And that's what I love about a startup or a small company versus a medium-sized company and larger companies like Microsoft, is you do have that ability to change. So you do have those long-term strategies. You have those plans out there, but the big part of that plan is you got to be quick.
So how would you change, or is there anything that you would change with kind of how you would start a startup if you were trying to do something nonprofit rather than profit-based?
And I don't know what kind of nonprofit you're talking about, but Andy and I have been involved in a number of nonprofits, and the reason they're nonprofits is because your revenues from whatever you're doing, and we're involved in the Mobius Science Center, for example, the membership revenues and the attendance revenues just don't support the operations. So otherwise, I think a lot of the elements are actually completely identical. Now, your only difference is you've got to be able to figure out how to market this to donors. How are you going to get donors to fund your cause? And really, it's no different than young companies trying to raise capital from people to fund their cause. You've got to be able to appeal to them. You've got to be able to put together a clear business plan. And really, in the non-profit world, and we hear this all the time, is you've got to indicate that you can be sustainable. Whatever your nonprofit is, you can be sustainable for eternity. And yeah, you have to have a certain level of donor support, but it can't be, an unreasonably high percentage of your cash flows.
What do you suggest when it comes to like finding where your passions lie, like for searching for a company that you would want to start, if that's like more so where you're stuck? Like for instance, you kind of took over like an awning company, and now it's something that you believe firmly in and like the stuff that you're doing. So where do you suggest that you start if you don't even really know kind of like where you want to start?
Well, we have a book here. What do you do with an idea? Anyway, so that's a good question for Andy.
No, that's a great question. You know, I think about my history. I graduated from WSU with a marketing degree. You know, most manufacturing guys are engineers, right? And I didn't graduate saying, you know what, I'm gonna make a new Ford operating base. That wasn't it. But what I did have was my entrepreneurial spirit. I saw an opportunity to get into a business and innovate and do what I love. And that's what I love doing. I get up in the morning and I love to be part of teams of people building a better product. And all of these products that come out of this are just a subset of that. I found out what I love doing, and that was the important part of it.
Andy, I was curious. I was reading a little bit last night about the Berg Company, and I saw the sale several years back to the Coeur d'Alene tribe. And I was curious. It seemed to me that was probably done for bidding advantages. I was wondering if they came to you or if that was part of your business plan going to them.
Part of our business plan. Being largely a government contractor, there's a lot of different government contracting vehicles that we have to be able to work within. There was a particular very large contract from the Army in this case, and it was set aside for a Native American tribe, not Native American, so Native American tribe. So we did a joint venture with them for that contract. Went very well. Worked within the spirit of the contract, and they're great friends of mine down there. Chief down there is a great friend of mine.
So I have a question. You guys talk a lot about bootstrapping a company, starting small, not looking for large capital. And I've seen like a couple documentaries about startups, and one of the things that really struck me about them is when they get that initial investment to kind of really get their business off the ground, they have a hard time scaling up. And that seems like something that maybe a lot of companies face, especially if they're dealing with physical objects, not like kind of intangible ones like software. So how do you suggest for a small startup that's trying to bootstrap themselves, if you're trying to scale up, how do you do that? Do you bring in an expert or do you try to keep it in-house?
Again, how did we scale up? How did we scale up to a $3 million company after we were $1 million the first year, which I thought was scaling up a lot, $1 million the first year. We did it with the 50,000, but it was again rolling up sleeves. It was manufacturing at night. That we brought in part of our. I guess I failed to go through part of our business model there with companies like SportScope that we start. We bring in part of that. A team member becomes an owner operator. They become our partner. I'm minority partner over a 3-year period, the best. And so we had a young man named Derek Taylor. He's 28 now, so he was 24 at the time, 25. And basically we pooled our resources, worked his tail off. There was manufacturing being done on Saturdays, evenings, but we also really worked with our cash flow. So it was a product that in most cases was paid up front. And so we used that cash to invest in that marketing. We're big on the lean manufacturing side, which we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about because that's more on the manufacturing side of things. But on the lean manufacturing side, we watch our cash flow, single piece flow. We don't build, our competitors build a warehouse full of product. We build the one when it's ready to go and it goes out the next day. So a lot of that systems, lean manufacturing, bootstrapping allowed us to grow like that.
The other thing I would add too is, and I've seen this movie many, many times, is a company scaling up to actual orders and actual demand, or hoped for demand. The great thing about SportScope Video is we had real demand. And because we were lean, and because we outsourced manufacturing, and because we had a business model, back to the business model thing, that got us upfront cash, we were able to really meet that demand with really very little outside cash. Now, where I see companies get in trouble is they go, man, I built this super cool widget. Everybody's going to want one, but I'm going to need $5 million to build a manufacturing facility, to build a whole bunch of finished products, to go out there and market it. But I really haven't sold any yet. I've only sold a couple. And there are just so many, and part of that scaling up problem comes to, you might say otherwise, well, why don't you just, go a little slower, make a few, sell them, get some profit, then make a few more and do it that way. Part of the problem, frankly, is what's wrong with the venture capital model is the venture capitalists come to you, put a gun to your head and say, I want a liquidity event in 5 years. You got to scale up really quickly. And it just doesn't always work that way. Because you might build this manufacturing facility, you might build all these products, but they're not quite what the market wants. The market wants blue, not red, but you don't know that until you've kind of iterated. So the whole scaling up thing is sometimes I got to I scratch my head and say, what are we scaling up to? Do we really have customers who are ready to buy this?
Andy, building off that last question, at what point did you recognize that you needed to move into contract manufacturing rather than in-house? Or do you still do it all in-house?
So we contract manufactured for the first year, and that helped our cash flow. Then we went into the lean manufacturing, and that's where we're at today. So
why did you decide to have a manufacturing, do all your own manufacturing?
Brought it in-house because we can increase our margins quite a bit. Being pretty familiar, Boeing trained, lean manufacturing people, we saw that if you hire someone else to do it, they're going to take at least 30%. They're 25 minimum. So there's that profit in there. So by bringing it in, it allowed us the first year to kind of put our big boy pants on. And then year 2, we could bring that in-house and then start enjoying that larger margin.
And you were able to do that because you already had the previous manufacturing training?
Yes. Yeah, so very familiar with the Kanban system, single piece flow, 5S, all that good stuff.
Would you have needed to have hired somebody that had experience in that if your team lacked that when you made that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
What do you consider an acceptable net profit margin for a startup?
Enterprise software companies have very high, like Microsoft. Grocery stores chains have very low. I guess I would look at kind of what industry standards are, and you ought to at least be at the industry standard or better. But I also do realize, not all companies are necessarily profitable in year 1 and year 2. That's kind of been a real point of emphasis for Andy and I, and we've focused on it, but it doesn't always happen. Early on, I might maybe focus on your gross margins and keeping your expenses modest, but just thinking about making a profit by itself is good. In early stages, if you're just making a profit in years 2 or 3, that is just good on you. And frankly, I know in my company, etailz right now, we're profitable, but frankly, we try to keep the profits low because we want to take that cash flow that we generate from sales of our products and reinvest it in new initiatives. But we want to do it by still maintaining profitability. And Josh, who's my co-founder in the company, keeps looking at Jeff Bezos at Amazon and says, well, look at Bezos never makes money. Why should we be making money? And, we kind of go back and forth on that. And really at the end of the day, we've decided that we make the lowest amount of money that our bank will allow us to make without taking our line of credit away. And that's and they want to see some increase in profits. But for us, if we have profits, we have to pay taxes on it. And really, we ought to be taking that cash flow and reinvesting it in the business.